Question number 1. Okay, here I got a underwater fish identification slate. They're pretty awesome to have. You can actually attach them to your BCD, and then under the water, when you see something that you like, you can find it and identify it and learn a little bit more about it. So they're pretty handy. As you can see on these slates, it's very colorful because all the fish have very beautiful colors, especially if you're diving in tropical areas. So now you're at 12 meters, you're seeing a pretty fish. It kind of looks like this one. You're looking at the name and it says red fire goby. Then you look at the picture and it's kind of brownish and white. And you kind of go like, wow, why is it called red when it clearly looks brownish? It's because if you would take this slate back up to the surface, now you look at the fish, it actually does look very, very red. And that's because water absorbs colors. And the first color that disappears when you go under the water is red. And it starts to become, looking a little bit brownish. If you want to know what other colors will disappear, well, it's kind of the same order as the rainbow. So after red, kind of orange starts to go away, and then yellow, etc., etc., etc. The deeper you go, the less colorful things will be. That is why sometimes when we have our students coming up from dive number 1, where we went to a maximum depth of 12 meters, a lot of them are super excited, it was so cool. But I do get the question saying, hey, it wasn't so colorful at certain points during the dive. When I was watching National Geographic underwater documentaries, it's much more colorful. But that has to do because when they film those documentaries, they have these big lights on the side of their cameras lighting up the reef and the colors that they produce. And that's the reason why. Another reason is sometimes you guys have been snorkeling a lot, where you've been very close to very shallow reef or fish, and then the colors will be much more intense as well. Now, it doesn't mean now that when you go scuba diving, you're not going to see all these pretty colors that you imagine. There's lots of beautiful things to see. There's lots of colors still to see. Some colors are extremely intense. However, it's going to be a little bit less than when you're seeing it extremely shallow or on land. So another thing that happens to us under the water is that objects appear larger and closer to us. Now, this is called refraction. Now, when you're under the water for your first dive, you might, think like, hey, I don't really see a big difference. But that's because everything around you is sort of becoming larger and closer to you. So you can't really compare it. But there's definitely a difference. For us, we're, as instructors, we have quite a lot of experience, and we kind of know a little bit more about the differences between it. So it's kind of funny when our students come up, when they say, wow, it's so cool, it's all this really big fish. And then we're kind of know that fish is kind of a bit smaller than what they say. But it doesn't mean they're lying, it's because you think it is really big because of refraction. Another thing that we notice is sometimes our students are too far away from the reef or the group because they think they're close because of this refraction effect, but actually in reality they're a little bit farther away. So when your instructor tells you to come a bit closer, don't worry about it, just come a bit closer, it's all okay. Now, we don't want you to get too close to the reef though, that you might touch it. But on the other hand, we also don't want you to be too far that you can't enjoy or see anything, or might even start to float up all the way back up to the surface. So again, colors gets absorbed under the water and objects appear larger and closer when we go scuba diving. All right, let's look at question number 2. So this question is quite important. And if you haven't watched it yet, please, after this video, check out my other video where in chapter number 1, I explain this question a little bit better. All right, let's talk about trim first. So when this is the bottom and this is the surface right here, and let's say that this bottom is right now 10 meters deep, so it's perfect for dive number 1 and 2. And you're here, this is your head, these are your legs. Then we would like you to be in this position, just above the reef, not too close that you can touch it and not too far that you can't see anything. In a beautiful horizontal position, which means like this and not like this or like that. We really want you to be as straight as possible. Because what happens now when you kick your legs, you kick and you're actually going to where you are kicking, to where your legs are pointing from. So kick and then you go. And kick and there you go. That's one of the reasons why we want to be horizontal and in a proper trim. If you're going to be slightly like this and you're kicking your legs, you're just going to swim back up to the surface, or in the other way, you're just going to swim into the bottom. So we really want to sort of swim to where we want to go to. Now, another reason for this as well is that it's extremely effective to move through it. Because, like we already discussed in the previous chapter, is that water is much denser than air. So if you're in this position, the water pressure is like everywhere on the front. You're sort of moving like this, and it's really hard to get to all this water. But if you're in this position, the water is only touching sort of your head, and then it sort of goes over. So like an airplane or a Formula One racing car, you're just kind of trying to go through it as efficient as possible in this proper trim position. We don't want to flap our hands or anything because it just uses more energy. I know it's weird, but I know you're used to swimming like this or like that on the surface, but it just uses more energy. It's bad for our air consumption, and you might touch things as well. And it's just not effective at all when we're scuba diving. So we just want to use our legs to move forward. So with our hands, we hold them like this or like this, maybe next to you, behind you. You can hold onto your BCD, which looks pretty cool. Your instructor might give you some different tips as well, how to streamline your arms. So the proper trim is in this position. Now we're moving into streamlining our arms. And of course, another thing that's important when we want to streamline is our equipment. Because when you're wearing your BCD, your jacket, you're going to have some hoses on the side. And for example, your SPG, which is your air gauge, you want to tuck that into your BCD or clip it onto your BCD. An alternate air source, the second stage, the octopus, which we can give to our body or anybody that might need to use that if they, in the unlikely event to run out of air. You want to click that or attach it anywhere in a triangular area on the front of your BCD as well. But you don't want to have it bungling, under you, because you're just going to get entangled in the reef or maybe damage your equipment or the reef itself. So have everything streamlined and have your arms streamlined as well. All right, and then the last one, it says swim slowly and steadily. That's very important as well because, like I just said, the water is much more denser than air, so it's much more harder to get through it. So if you're gonna go really fast or you're trying to go really fast, you're gonna use too much energy, you're gonna breathe very quick and shallow, which might lead to a panic moment or overexertion. Your air consumption will go really fast as well, and it's just really uncomfortable, and you don't see any cool stuff because you're moving so fast through the water. So the moment we are under the water, we're scuba diving, kick, and glide. Kick, and glide. Nice and slow. Trust me, it's harder than it sounds. And your instructor will probably tell you a few times on your first dives to slow it down. But you get better at it over time. And after, 50 to 100 dives, it's like, you're just gliding through the water. It's an absolutely amazing experience. Some of the best new scuba divers that we see around, they already do this on their first dive. So if you want to impress your instructor on your first dive 1 and 2, or even 3 and 4, then really try to move super slow, unless of course they ask you to come a little bit closer. It depends all where you're going to be diving, of course. If you can be diving in very cold water, you can be diving in super warm tropical waters, or anything in between. The colder the water is, the more this becomes an issue. However, it can still be an issue in nice warm tropical waters. Or sometimes, for some people, even more, because I'm from Holland, and I just notice sometimes from people that come from, some colder countries like Northern Europe, Scandinavia, North America, Canada, they are so used to the cold, is that when they actually arrive to a tropical area and they find out that the water temperature is like 22 degrees, they go, oh my God, 22 degrees? In my country, it is always 1 or 2 degrees or even below zero. So they think, they can just go in a very thin wetsuit or shorty and there will be no issues. But because water is denser than air, it also takes the heat out of our body much faster, around 20 times faster in water than in air. And that's a lot. So that means that even when the water temperature is 22 degrees Celsius, which makes you think like, oh, that's really warm, it actually isn't, especially if we're under there or in there for a longer period of time. And when we're doing scuba diving, and yeah, a short scuba dive, very short, like 20 minutes, a little bit longer, still short, is 30 minutes. Average is 40 to 45 minutes, and long ones are 1 hour plus. So you can imagine how cold you can get throughout that time. So listen to your instructors, listen to your dive guides and leaders, do always a local orientation when you go to a new location, and they will tell you the temperature of the water and recommend you the right exposure suit. If it's really nice and warm, so for example, if it's like 29 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees, you can easily dive, for most people, with a 3mm shorty wetsuit. Or even just a rest guard and your board shorts. It's perfectly normal as well to dive in that. When it comes to 27 degrees, well, personally, I'm getting a little bit chilly already. I would like to have at least 3mm and maybe a bit longer wetsuit. 25 degrees, woo, but I'm a bit spoiled as I've been diving always in tropical areas. For me, 5mm long wetsuit, and 23, 22 degrees, absolutely still the same. And below that, I already need some thicker wetsuits. Then again though, another person, they might laugh at that and they say, the 25 degrees, I can still dive in a 3mm. So it also depends a little bit on the person, and you kind of have to test this out. But it's really important that if you are under the dive and you start to become too cold, you start to shiver, your jaw start to go, maybe you get a little bit blue lips, or you can recognize this at your body, then it's time to just cancel the dive and go back up to the surface and seek warm. Because if you don't, that can lead to hypothermia, and that can be a serious condition. So there's always another dive, just cancel it and then just do the next dive. Question number 4. This question was already very well explained in the PADI Open Water Diver Manual Answers of Chapter number 1 on my previous video. So again, if you haven't checked it out, go and have a look at that after this video. But I'm gonna explain it one more time, and I'll probably explain it again a few more times in the future. Because this is a very important thing to understand, know how to recognize, and know how to solve. And why is this? It's because when we're like super calm under the water, like I just said, and we just kick and we glide, we look at some cool stuff, and we kick and we glide and look at some cool stuff, we're almost using no energy at all, which means that we don't need to breathe very fast, and we can breathe really slow and deeply in and out. I hope you're still with me. This is the way we want you to breathe. Because the pressure, and we have this dead airspace, if you're breathing, you're building up all this carbon dioxide, and that triggers just more and more breathing, and then there's a bit of a dead airspace here, so it's really hard for your airflow to go around, and that means it feels, or you get a feeling that you don't have enough air, or you're suffocating, and that leads to panic, and then of course you just want to go up. And a lot of people that have this issue then go up too fast, which is also not good. So it leads to all these problems. Way to solve this just by being relaxed. You will never get into this feeling. However, sometimes even when you try to be relaxed, it still can happen. And why? Is because maybe, like in this question, it says an unexpected current can occur. And when this current comes, it's going to push you a certain direction. So if you're trying to counter effect that, you're going to have to use a lot of energy, and you're going to breathe a lot more. So sometimes we see people getting pushed away from the reef, and they go like, oh, I'm just gonna, it's right there, and they're just gonna swim, but it's already too much. So if that happens and you just start to get out of breath, and you feel that super uncomfortable feeling, then you can actually solve it quite quick as well, but just catching your breath. And that means do not keep swimming, do not keep moving around, just relax. It's very handy to hold onto your body, that is so nice, and just catch that breath. And once your breath is caught, you're ready to go. You can just continue your dive, or if this current now is too annoying, too strong, it's just gonna push you away from the reef, and just cancel the dive, go back up, just do another dive. There's so many more dives you're gonna be doing. All right, this is an important rule and an easy rule, but for some reason, out of my personal experience, I have seen this rule being forgotten, ignored, and just people don't even know about it in some cases, even when they're certified. And every single time, it causes a problem. So it's very important right now to understand this one and to always follow this one. And always include it as well in your briefing whenever you meet new people. So whenever you're diving with a buddy, it doesn't have to be two people. It can be one person or two or three or a whole group. The general rule is, if you get lost from your buddy, if you get separated from the group, then you should search for no more than 1 minute and then slowly surface to the surface and reunite at the surface. If you don't like it, that's not really mentioned here, but if you don't like to be under the water alone for a minute, you can always go up straight away, but never too fast, so nice and slow. And then if you go up straight away and you're at the surface and you don't see anyone, wait for a little bit, because they might be searching for you for around a minute, and then they should come up to the surface as well. That's why it's so important to not search for longer than 1 minute, because if the other people or other person does it correctly and search for only up to 1 minute, goes up to the surface, and you're still searching after 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, that person on the surface becomes very anxious, thinking that maybe now something worse is happening. Starts to maybe shout for help, EMS might be alerted, and all these people are involved, and then in the end you're just searching all by yourself for longer than 1 minute. So it's very important to never search longer than 1 minute. Just go up to the surface and reunite with that person. If that person doesn't show up over time, then we can go into the next procedures of, for example, doing search patterns, finding that person that's missing under the water. This is something that you learn more in your PADI Diver Rescue course. And if you want to learn more information about that, then just ask your instructor at any time during the course. Because when we're diving with another person or persons, not every person you're going to be diving with is going to be scuba diving the same way that you like to scuba dive. Some people are slower, some people are faster, some people have underwater cameras and they just concentrate just on their camera. They don't care so much about you. Like if you have the same body that you dive with all the time, of course you're gonna have a very good team under the water. But when you are traveling around and you want to go fun diving in different dive shops around the world, you're going to be teamed up a lot of times with people that you just don't know. And some people are just nicer and better and safer than others. And some people are just extremely selfish. They swim really fast, they only focus on their cameras, they don't care about you at all. So because you never really know your body and how good they are to you, it is always your responsibility in the end. And if you feel that your body, for example, is swimming too fast, then you should then at any point try to catch them, try to grab their fin, pull their fin a little bit and say, you, slow down. I want to look at all this stuff. And if those people then don't listen, now it's time to cancel the dive and just go up. But a lot of times you just have to remind someone to slow down a bit and they go, oh yeah, sorry. And now they slow down. Or when they so focus on their cameras, maybe you can tap them and say, hey, you know, I'm here. Remember, maybe check my air. And they go, oh, sorry. So it's your responsibility in the end. We see it a lot with the body checks as well that we do before the dive. So it's a check to just double check if you put all your equipment together the right way, if you're wearing it the right way, if it's all streamlined, if the air is open, etc. So in this particular case, if people get very experienced, then a lot of people don't want to do this body check anymore because they think they don't need to. And that's why if you feel that your body is sort of like skipping it, says, yeah, you look good, let's go. You can tell them, hey, I'm really sorry, but I really want to do a body check. It just makes me feel much more comfortable during the dive. By the way, if you want to know about what a body check is, go and check my videos on my channel. I have multiple videos explaining in detail how to do a body check. So they're great for now when you're doing this PADI Open Water Dive, of course, or in the future if you need a bit of a refresh. So we have 50 bar that we want to keep as a reserve, and we want to have 20 bar for our safety stop. So if we add those together, that's 70 bar. So if I now do 200 minus 70 bar, I have 130 bar left. So if I then have 130 bar and I divide that by 3, which is the rule of thirds, I get 43 bar. So now when I take 200, which is our full scuba cylinder, and I subtract 43 bar, I get 157 bar. And that's the time to turn back to our entry point. Question number 8 of the PADI Open Water Diver Manual, answers of chapter number 2. You guys are doing absolutely fantastic and you are halfway through. If you're liking it so far, please don't forget to hit that like button. And also, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell so you're getting updated every time I upload a new scuba diving training video. All right, let's get into this question. All right, having a loose fin strap can happen once in a while. Maybe because the fin strap is a little bit old or it's worn out. Maybe because you haven't serviced it on time. Or sometimes because you accidentally didn't just put it on the right way and you didn't cut it during your body check as well. Sometimes it happens as well when we're jumping into the water. So there's all these different reasons why this can happen, and it's not always the end of the world. But if you're trying to keep swimming on the surface with a loose fin strap, you might lose your fin, or it's really hard to swim because your fin is really loose and it's all over the place. So if this happens, make sure you keep your mask on, regulator in. Double check that you fully inflated your BCD until you hear that air pop, pop, pop coming out of your BCD. All right, then signal your buddy or say, hey buddy, scream. Say, I need some help with my fin strap. And then he or she will come over, and then together you can fix your fin strap and continue your swim on the surface to your entry point for your scuba dive, or exit point if this happens in the end of the dive. If you can't get your fin strap on at all, then it's time to just cancel that dive, go back to the boat and fix it. And if there's enough time, you might go back into the water and do the dive, or wait for the next dive. Question number 9 of this PADI Open Water Knowledge Review, chapter number 2. Here we go. All right, so to make a descent, what we like to do every time that we are going down under the water, we like to do a 5-point descent. And to remember the steps of these 5 points, we can use sorted. So the S is step number 1 in the 5-point descent, which means signal OK to go down. Step number 2 is the O from orientation. So we're basically looking around on the surface. Where's the boat? Where's land? Where are the buoy lights, descent lines, other boats maybe in the area? And don't forget to always look down with your mask on from the surface to see where you're going to, so everything is clear. Maybe have a look at the descent line if you have a descent line. Number 3 is the R from regulator. So if you're having your mask and your snorkel on the surface, now it's time to switch over from your snorkel to your regulator. You might want to perch it a bit to get the water out of the regulator and put it into your mouth and start to breathe. I always take a moment to now double check with my buddies to make sure everybody, including myself, have a regulator in. So step number 4 is time. and we just want to double check our dive computer. You have it on your wrist, you might have it on your SPG to make sure that all the settings is okay and to remember your descent time. And then we got E and D, which is step number 5, which means equalize, elevate your deflator hose as high as you can, deflate, press the deflator button, exhale, and slowly descend down. And that is the 5-point descent. I get a lot of questions from people later that says, oh, I can't remember the 5-point descent steps, can you help me out? Or if you check the videos on this channel, I make multiple videos about all those 5 steps to help you to remember it in the future. So check out my other videos on this channel. So wetsuits are made out of neoprene, which means that when we're going down and we got the pressure of the water surrounding it, it's actually gonna compress the wetsuit a little bit, depending on how deep that we are. And first of all, when we make the wetsuit thinner, we're also displacing less water, so we're losing a little bit of buoyancy and we might start sinking or descending too fast. That's why adding a bit of air once in a while is very handy to control your descent and control your buoyancy so you don't go too fast. And that's the only reason. Question number 11 of the PADI Open Water Diver course, answers of chapter number 2. There's very rare occasions that you might not have a reference, and then you of course have no choice and you still in the end need to make an ascent when you need to. However, if you're planning your scuba dive correctly, then you should always try to have a reference going down or going back up to the surface. And a reference can be different things. Like for example, you can use a descent line, which is a rope that goes down to the bottom. Maybe a sloping bottom contour when you're doing a shore dive, so the bottom is the reference. Sometimes a wall or a pinnacle can be a reference as well. Some cases you can hold on to the reference, like that descent line, which is also really handy to slow down your descent or ascent, or it helps with equalizing your ears. Some people get really calm when they hold on to things, so that's really nice. Now, if it's a sloping bottom contour or a wall or a pinnacle, you can't really hold on to it, but then it still gives you an orientation point, telling you which way is up and down, guiding you to where you have to go. So it's always better, especially if you feel a little bit nervous about this whole scuba diving experience or this PADI Open Water Diver course, then having a reference can really help you. So ask about it with your instructor and he can give you some really good tips how to use a reference on a scuba dive properly. The first one says you should never send faster than 80 meters per minute or try to even be slower than that. And that's absolutely true. You also find this rule on your RDP, Recreational Dive Planner, and it comes back over and over and over again in multiple PADI courses. Why is it so important? Is because you're going to learn a little bit later in the PADI Open Water Diver course, answers of chapter number 4, that when we are going under the water, we are exposed to absorbing nitrogen. Because going up too fast, faster than 80 meters per minute, can lead to decompression sickness, which is basically your nitrogen that you absorb during the dive coming out of the solution, out of your tissues too fast, and they become too large, and now they can get stuck at certain places in your body. And this can cause real problems, and you can definitely get injured from this. So always, whatever you do, make sure you ascend at any time, even if it's a little bit, or in the end all the way up to the surface, slower than 18 meters per minute. During this PADI Open Water Diver course, your instructor will practice this with you a lot. Another one is stopping for 3 minutes at 5 meters in the end of the dive. We call this a safety stop, and the signal for safety stop is 5 meters for 3 minutes. Why do we like to do this stop? Because if you're doing no decompression diving, you can always go back up to the surface without making a decompression stop, like they have to do in technical diving. This is not a decompression stop, it is a safety stop. which means that, hey, we're not in a rush, we have a lot of time, and why don't we stop for at least 3 minutes at 5 meters, which is right in between the surface 0 and 10 meters of depth. And remember from before that I explained that the biggest pressure change is between 0 and 10 meters, where it goes from 1 bar to 2 bar. So in the end, when we're making our ascent, you're going from 2 bar to 1 bar. And that's where the pressure difference is really big. That also means we have a higher risk of getting decompression sickness or other issues. So it's really important to us to stop at 5 meters, and now we have a chance to lower the amount of nitrogen we have in our body, and now that makes our last 5 meters even safer. So always try to do a safety stop in the end of the dive. And then the last thing is to adjust your buoyancy in frequent amounts. So remember what we also discussed before. When we are making our ascent, we're actually reducing the pressure around us, and that makes any air volume expand. So when you're swimming up to the surface, that air in that jacket now starts to expand also. And remember, the more water you displace, the more buoyant you get, and you might get an uncontrolled ascent or a too fast ascent. That is why when we're swimming up, we have our right hand above our head. I hope you can still see that with the video frame. And then our left hand is right here where we're holding up the deflator hose of our BCD. And you have the deflator button right here. So when we're swimming up, just swim up with your legs, looking up, and you feel that the air is expanding. You just let some air out of your BCD like this. Sometimes you have to do a lot, you have to hold it down all the way. I like to actually empty it fully and just swim up to the surface and hold it down continuously. But some people, they prefer to maybe just release the air, let it go a bit, release the air, let it go a bit. It's a little bit up to you, and also ask your instructor for his or her advice. Now to go up, we like to use what we call a 5-point ascent. So step 1 is signal okay to go up. Step 2, we like to check the time, so we like to check our computer and the ending time of the dive. Step 3 is to go into ascent position, which is again holding your head above your head to protect it. Hold your hose up, press the deflate button to release that air. Step 4, we like to look around to make sure everything is clear. And then at step 5, we like to swim up nice and slowly, rotating, making sure we have a beautiful clear view above us. Once in a while, look at your buddies, look at the instructor if you're doing a course, and just slowly swim up until you reach the 5 meters for 3 minutes to do your safety stop. And then in the end, use that same ascent position again to go up to the surface. At the surface, fully inflate that BCD until you're air releasing, so you're nice and buoyant, and then switch from your regulator back to your snorkel and signal that you're okay. All of this sounds like a lot. Again, check my other videos. I have a lot of videos how to do the 5-point ascent, but you can also, of course, ask your instructor, and you'll be practicing this a lot during your PADI Open Water Diver course. Question number 13. Now actually, before we get into it, I hope you're liking it so far. I hope this is helping you do your PADI Open Water Diver course. Actually look below this button, there's a join button. Maybe after this video you can click on that, and then it explains how you become a member of my channel. And then for a small donation, you get really cool perks and all kinds of emojis, and you also help to support my channel so I can keep making these training videos for you. Anyway, up to you if you like to do it. Let's now go into question number 13. Now to go up, we like to use what we call a 5-point ascent. So step 1 is signal okay to go up. Step 2, we like to check the time, so we like to check our computer and the ending time of the dive. Step 3 is to go into ascent position, which is again holding your head above your head to protect it. Hold your hose up, press the deflate button to release that air. Step 4, we like to look around to make sure everything is clear. And then at step 5, we like to swim up nice and slowly, rotating, making sure we have a beautiful clear view above us. Once in a while, look at your buddies, look at the instructor if you're doing a course, and just slowly swim up until you reach the 5 meters for 3 minutes to do your safety stop. and then in the end, use that same ascent position again to go up to the surface. At the surface, fully inflate that BCD until you're air releasing, so you're nice and buoyant, and then switch from your regulator back to your snorkel and signal that you're okay. All of this sounds like a lot. Again, check my other videos. I have a lot of videos how to do the 5-point ascent, but you can also, of course, ask your instructor, and you'll be practicing this a lot during your PADI Open Water Diving course. So what is a wetsuit? Well, let me do my Superman. And now I'm wearing a wetsuit. So as you can see, it is a bit thicker than wearing, for example, a rash guard, but not as thick as a big dry suit. This one is a 3mm. A lot of people that like to dive with a 5mm full wetsuit, and some people they like to be a little bit more free and they like to have a 3mm shorty. So basically for me personally, when I'm scuba diving in the water that I'm used to, I'm or diving in a rash guard or in this wetsuit. To be honest though, I prefer diving in a rash guard if I can, but it's not always possible with the temperature of the water. So in this case, with the wetsuit, the water will go into the wetsuit and then it's nice and snug, so it stays trapped between the suit and my body. My body very quickly heats up that little bit of water, and that water now becomes warm and that heats me back up. That's kind of how a wetsuit works. Now this works for quite a lot of different temperatures, and you can go quite cold with really thick wetsuits. However, at one point it just becomes so cold that even the thickest wetsuit will not be enough. Now in this case you want to focus on a dry suit. A dry suit is a suit that completely keeps you dry inside. So no water will enter your dry suit. It's actually a little bit tricky to scuba dive with a dry suit if you've never done it. So if you're used to diving without wetsuits or with wetsuits, and now you're going into water that's really cold, then don't just get a dry suit yourself and go scuba diving in it. Doesn't matter how much experience you have. So you first have to learn how to scuba dive with a dry suit. So ask your instructor for more information about that. And then the last option is a skin suit, or most people know it as what we call a rash guard. So what is a rash guard then? Well, let me wear one right now. Okay, so this is a rash guard that I'm wearing right now. As you can see, it's really nice and thin. So it doesn't offer a lot of protection from colder water, but if you're diving in really warm water, then this is actually really nice to wear. It's very comfortable, and it's much more easier to move around through the water and to do things. So I absolutely love rash guards. That's why if you check my videos, you actually see me wearing a rash guard on most of my videos. That's just because I'm usually diving in very nice, warm, tropical waters. So this is really nice to have. I always say that the thinner the suit, the easier it is to move around under the water. But then again, you really need to get the proper exposure suit depending on the conditions that you're diving in. Otherwise, you might risk hypothermia. Which is you're super excited to go diving, you're on the dive boat or you're on the shore and you just want to get ready. So you're putting on your wetsuit and now you have to wait for people doing the dive briefing or maybe going into the water because other people are before you, and you find out very quickly that it gets very, very warm in your wetsuit, and it even gets worse in your dry suit. Now, if it's now already a very warm day at exactly the same time, you can really risk overheating, or maybe at one point even worse. So make sure you really put on your wetsuit or your dry suit at the last possible moment, then gear up with your equipment, do your body check and get into the water so you won't risk overheating. Alright, last question of the PADI Open Water Diver Manual Answers of chapter number 4, which is 16. A cutting tool doesn't have to be a dive knife, it can be, but it can also be scissors or any other specially designed diving cutting tool. Cutting tools are something that we actually don't use that often when we are recreational scuba diving, But in unlikely events, we might get entangled in, for example, a fishing line, or you might see a net or some garbage on a PADI aware conservation dive, and you want to remove that from the dive site without damaging the dive site, then a cutting tool can be very, very handy. Now, especially in, for example, an emergency like being entangled in a fishing line, you want to be able to quickly reach it, and you want to be able to reach it with both hands, because if you're entangled in a way that your right hand can't reach it, your left hand should still be able to reach it. There's so many different cutting tools out there, so maybe after this you can ask your instructor for some advice which cutting tool is the best for you. Alright guys, so we just reached the end of the questions of the PADI Open Water Diver Manual of chapter number 4. I hope that you really liked it and that you learned something, and if you did, please don't forget to hit that like button just under this video. And if you want to support me and the channel, then don't forget to check out the join button, become a member of the channel, and that donation will help me to create really cool content for you guys. Now, as you can see, there is a video popping up right here in the screen, and that is the PADI Open Water Diver Manual answers of chapter number 3. So please click that and continue preparing for your PADI Open Water Diver course. Now, before we leave you, also there's a lot of information in the description below and lots of really cool links as well to find more information how you can join my scuba diving courses or even become a PADI Dive Master or PADI Scuba Diving Instructor in the end. Alright guys, again, I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see you on the next video. Bye bye!